Welcome to another episode of Night to the Brown Table, a podcast of three Pacific Islanders sharing our views and the lens through which we see the world. I'm Sefa.
I'm Sila.
To the vast intergalactic space of the interwebs, it is a songstress, seamstress, mistress, mattress of this generation. Someone who also claims our heritage from Chinese and Germany, our colonizers, who has also turned into a journalist slash a dangerous rabbit.
I like that's my favorite one.
Dangerous rabbit.
Yeah. A rapeti, as some would say.
Yeah, multi-languagely. Let's go.
Kia ora.
Lamah. Hi.
We have a guest. His name is TAOFIA Pelesasa, a Tokelauan-Samoan Kiwi born and raised in Rotorua, New Zealand, but based out here in Sydney, Australia. He got into the industry by way of acting, but identifies as a creative with a particularly deep love for screenwriting and filmmaking. Welcome.
Brush your shoulder.
Kia ora.
Brush your shoulder, please.
Thank you so much. I still feel like the intro was so much worse than the one that just went before
Wait,
me.
there was so much more.
No,
Yeah.
there is so much more.
And also, I'm a journalist too. And also a rabbit.
He's a rabbit and a rapati as well.
I was like, that was the first dot point. So I'm going to keep going.
Oh, why did we
His
stop? Why did we
resume.
stop?
I'll keep going in Māori. No, but welcome.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
having me.
coming on the show. We really appreciate you coming out.
So flabbergasted that we even have guests on our show, to be honest.
No, seriously,
Like,
we had
Really?
a talk with Fia beforehand. We're very nervous because you're like legit.
Oh.
We're really icky as well.
Yeah,
Super
for real.
legit.
We were
Yeah,
So
I'm
it's
really
weird
nervous.
getting professional, like actual people
Oh,
who
no,
aren't
no.
just our friends.
Like a little bit professional, a little bit ratchet. That's my slogan in life, and I will continue running with
His
that.
bio line.
That's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah, I
my OnlyFans bio line.
Well, what's the handle? Let's link in. Why are we sitting here?
Please subscribe.
My mum will send it to you.
She's my
Go,
manager.
son, go.
She's my manager.
She's managing my
She's
OnlyFans. I don't even
Oma
know what
Rapeti, Oma.
OnlyFans is. I have no idea what OnlyFans is. So.
Oh, he's pretending to as well. Very good actor.
Very good. Oh, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm Samoan Tokelauan. My ancestral roots are to Whatausisa Futulawhai in Wailopa in Samoa and Nukunanu Tokelau. And my diaspora Pacific roots are to the communities of Fort Block, Rotorua and Mount Druitt, Western Sydney. That's me. I'm a creative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what that means. I just know that
Nice title.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I went in to be an actor and then sort of came out and I do a lot less acting than I do sort of other things. So
Yeah.
I don't really know where I belong.
Yeah.
But
So
that's
creative who is a little bit professional, a little bit
a little
ratchet.
ratchet. And that's
Love it.
all.
Bio line?
That's all we kind of need to know. I suppose.
Tell us a little bit of a story with your voice.
Oh,
What
yeah.
happened?
I should put a disclaimer on this disgusting thing
We don't have subtitles.
that is coming out of my mouth. So I was, I play footy,
Get it. Oh,
which is something that
With
people don't.
13-year-olds.
Yeah, just by myself, which is something people don't really know. I was punched in the throat.
By one of the mothers.
that wasn't even
I
on the
was punching the
field.
throat.
It wasn't even on the field.
Well, yeah, I wasn't at a game at all. It's just nothing to do with rugby at all. No, I went in for a tackle, got into a fight. Creative Fear is a really nice person, but rugby fear is a little bit
Yeah.
of a
That's
tryout.
Yeah.
I went in for a tackle, got up, a Samoan boy from Maryland's punched me in the throat.
Damn, I live in Maryland.
Ah,
Damn.
so
That's my
whoever you are, thank you. And I've been left with this very husky voice until I can sort myself out and go to a doctor's. And that's the story of my throat.
What team do you play for?
I play in Rose Bay at Willaro.
That's kind of fancy, huh?
It is very white, which is
Yeah.
probably why the Samoan boy punched me.
How is this
So,
on the island?
who the fuck is he playing for?
I know. Why are you playing for Rose Bay?
Help him know his place.
I was going to say,
No, I
Rose Bay.
honestly think that's the reason. Because I was the only brown person in that team. He was like, that whole team, Maryland's was all Samoans. They were like, Target, and so was me.
Target the only one.
Let's target the
brown
only,
face.
the traitor. And I only went to that team because my friend was in there, and so I went there.
Okay.
This is what happens when you,
This is what happens when
when you're trying to pretend to be someone else. You're punched in the throat.
Australia says no to violence.
Yeah. But also, like, I deserved it.
So, like, we wanted to bring Fia on because we've seen a lot of your stuff coming up with the making of Deity and Parramatta. And so we wanted to ask, why do you think having Pasifika people is important in like media representation?
Oh, it's huge. I think this is probably the worst example, but if you look at the confidence that white people have as they carry themselves in the world, all of that actually comes from hearing themselves and seeing themselves constantly.
True.
So the reason why it's important for us, and if you look at sort of the climate of Pacific people in Australia specifically, and I allude to the sort of situation that happened in Melbourne with our young boy who obviously lost his life, Solomon. And to me, that is an offshoot of our lack of visibility, because if you're giving these kids allowing these kids to hear themselves and see themselves, the amount of times those things happen would be reduced, because you're allowing these kids to hear and see themselves and feel valid. And so if you're not doing that in media, then what they believe is possible is less. And so then we end up doing sort of things like this. Basically, for me, it's more important for our young people to hear themselves and see themselves so that they get to a place that white people are right now, where they feel so confident in the world and carry themselves with that confidence in the world. And we sort of deserve that as well. And we don't have it anywhere in the world. But for me, Australia is my priority because it's where I'm from, it's where I live, it's where my family is. The differentiation between us here and Pacific people in New Zealand is vastly different. You know,
How so?
As someone who's lived and worked in diaspora, both diaspora, I can tell you, obviously there's still more room to go in New Zealand, but there is a privilege of being Pasifika in that country that we do not have here. There are like funding bodies that are solely funding rounds that are solely dedicated to Pasifika people creating work. There are schools dedicated to Pasifika achievement. There is language weeks that we all follow in the diaspora actually come from New Zealand. Like we're following the New Zealand lead on that stuff. None of that exists in this space. And they don't care in this country. They literally don't care. We fall into this big bracket of people of color, which is a term which I am slowly veering away from, because even in the discussion of people of color, Pacific people are still at the bottom. And for me, my priority is centering us in every opportunity that we have.
Because like I have seen shows and like we've seen, like for example, like we have a lot of Pacific Islanders that play sport in Australia. I've seen some shows where even with commercials, I feel like it's kind of changing as well. I see a lot more Pacific Islanders in commercials on Australian TV, but a lot of those roles and those parts haven't been written by Pacific Islanders.
And that's the problem, is that the fight now isn't to get us on screen. The fight is who is actually putting us there. I think the generation before us, their fight was just to be seen. So if that meant white people writing us in, then that meant white people writing us in. It just meant seeing us. But now our fight as a generation is not now to just be seen. It's who's putting us there and who's writing us in. Look at the family on Home and Away at the moment.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
so when I was watching that, like even with the writing of the what's this? Is it
Don't say Rapeti.
I was like, it's either Rapana. I can't remember the name of the Māori family on Home and Away. But seeing how they were written, I was just like, a lot of those family dynamics wouldn't really exist within a Māori family.
Totally.
They don't turn on brothers.
No.
A lot of them, they group together when it comes to culturally, you stick together with everything.
And those sorts of things are the giveaway. The giveaway that our people who are being seen aren't being written by us in any way, shape or form. And you can see right through it. Like a Pacifica person watching a Pacifica person on screen who isn't authentic, it's cringy. You cringe. There's something in you that goes, something's not right. And it's because of that. We're not being, the people breathing those characters to life aren't ourselves. And so that's sort of the bigger fight at the moment that I'm finding.
What is that fight kind of like? Because we don't really see it. Because you're not just talking about the person in front of the curtain. You're talking about being behind the curtain.
Totally.
What does that look like?
So I started a gig at ABC this week. ABC is like getting into a room which is predominantly white to create brown stories. That's the hard part. It's actually just getting in the room and people seeing your voice is valid, even if it's like they have Pacific characters in the work. Being a Pacific writer trying to get in the room to a lot of broadcasting places doesn't make sense to them. It's more annoying than anything. And so just getting in the room is the obstacle, I think. Which is what Deity and Parramatta sort of was a response to, is that we're around and we're here, but we can't get in the spaces, so we just have to create our own. And that's sort of what Parramatta and Deity came out of, was just, well, if you don't want to give us space, then we'll just have to make our own. And Parramatta and Deity is sort of a response to that. But not just me, there's so many other Pasifika filmmakers who are doing the same thing here in Western Sydney. So I'm just one,
and Lamah, we had this, what was it called? That festival that we went to in the city? Something of the light? Vivid.
Yeah.
And I remember there was this one time we got into, and because we're Christian. I don't want to specify what church we go to. If you want to know, then you can ask. But a lot of the people that a lot of the people that go to our church are very conservative, and so we got into the discussion because at church someone had brought up that if there was talk about Frozen 2 coming out, and that Elsa would be featured as lesbian. A lot of people from our church were saying that if that was the case, that they would boycott the film. And so I remember me and Lamah getting to a discussion. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was. I'm like riling up just even thinking about it. It's just the notion of people not understanding the importance of representation, especially when they've been represented in media constantly. The people that we're not arguing, but we were having this conversation with, they didn't understand. And I was thinking, like, the whole time I was thinking, but you see yourself in media all the time,
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Why do you want to dim representation of other kinds?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit your criteria of what is right.
Because I remember when we were talking, I was saying to them, I think it's important for more people of color, even though we don't like that word, but more like to show the diversity of the world and of Australia as well. And then I remember we were saying to them, it's important for kids who are LGBTQIA+ to be able to see themselves on screen and know that they're okay.
Yeah.
And that they are normal, that they're not like weird or abnormal. And it's the same with people of color as well, so that the default representation or standards of beauty isn't just white.
Oh, totally. But that raises a big problem within our own community as well. Like, we're not... My criticism is on the industry, but I also have criticisms of our own community as well, in that we are so intersectional, and that we're not just, brown people. Exactly. There are actually layers of intersectionality that... I'm a gay man. Yeah. So I'm telling a story about footy boys. Yeah. And to me, someone was like, why would you tell that story? Like, I was like, A, I play rugby, regardless of my sexuality. B, for me, even though this particular group of our community would never tell my story, the biggest act of love I can give back to my community is to tell theirs. And for me, that is showing solidarity, and that my love for my community is unconditional, even though they have conditions on whether I exist there or not.
I don't know why I'm getting emotional over that.
That was
I
powerful.
totally get that.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, seeing how a lot of our people, there's so much range, and not just like with different kinds of people, there's so many of just like an individual has so many layers and different sides to them. And it's important for everyone to be able to see themselves on screen
100%.
so that they can be able to see that, I'm like them.
Yeah.
Because that's how I felt when I saw Sis. That's how I felt when, watching some of your work that you put out with some of your short films. I was like, that's my grandma, that's me, that's my sister. And being able to see that, it's just like such a huge surge of pride.
Yeah, because the greatest disservice we can do to ourselves and our community is not to look at ourselves as multi-layered when we are. Because we already have the outside looking at us as one tone. Why would we do that to ourselves? We know how diverse our community is. It's such a disservice not to represent all of that.
I guess like growing up, you see the gap, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
what makes you see the gap and then going from seeing the gap to filling the gap? Like, what was that action that you took that?
It's because the gap is still very much real for me as well. Like, I think my activeness online sometimes creates this idea that I'm over the gap, but I'm still very much trying to get over it as well. What I've started to do was just to shift away from looking at the people on the other side of the gap and just going, well, they need to come over the gap. I don't need to go over the gap anymore. It's not my job to fill the gap anymore. It's yours. And that is shown in just simple way, well, not simple, but creating our own spaces. Yeah. And instead of putting us in the margin, putting us in the center and putting them in the margin. It sounds waffly, but for me, it's just a mental shift of they're never going to come to us. So forget them. And let's just do what we're doing here in Western Sydney.
Yeah, because I do find that a lot of the time when it comes to like people of color, or even when it comes to people who are LGBTQIA+, they're usually the side character.
Always.
Like the funny person or the hype person. But to have them as the central main character, that's like...
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge, but it's sad because it shouldn't be. Like, it shouldn't be a huge thing that we are the center of a story. Because we are the center of our stories every day. and we deserve the right to have that represented on television or on films and all that stuff as well. And that's just and for me, that's the core of what I do. It's just putting us where we belong. Yeah, you know, it's not rocket science for me.
When it comes to a Pacific community, a lot of people are very out there, and you'll see it in church. You see it like in like social circles. A lot of us are funny, very charismatic, confident when it comes to performing. Lamah and Sefa are prime examples of amazing.
Lamah.
With Sefa, some special things there.
When it comes to performing. And so like, how can someone, so I know that there are a lot of people that are listening now, how can someone actually be able to monetize on that?
Monetize on that.
Or become professional in those ways?
It's a hard one, because I sort of got into it by going the Western route, like going to drama school, getting an agent, then just doing the audition cycle over and over again. And I don't want to discourage people from doing that, because that's a very valid part of the industry, but you lose yourself in that world. I think the key to that is for more people, like, I'll use film as an example, more people who are making films like me to have enough courage to just create a space that is separate from that world and provide people with a path. Like, we took interns in from high schools, right? And like, no one takes interns into their film from high schools. And we took 4 in, because to me, allowing these kids to come onto set, we had like 2 Tongans and 2 Samoans come on set. They were like 15, 16 years old. And to see us in action, telling our own stories in a space we provided, that created it made a pathway as a brown person more real for them in this industry that part of the industry will never give them. So to answer that question, we need more of us creating our own spaces, telling our own stories, and that will give people or young people more of a reality, like
that it's real, that it's
pursue,
tangible,
that it's tangible, that you can do it,
grab it. Yeah.
And I want them to believe that without losing themselves, because of course they can do it and they can pursue it over there. And I don't want to be like doomsday, but it's hard over there to do it without forgetting who you are. And so I want to be part of a movement which creates our own industry, so that you can pursue it, and you can pursue it by being who you are.
Did you have like any experiences, because you were talking about you went on the Western way? Were there any moments where they said, "Oh, you're too brown," or "You speak too much of like you're some Pacific Islander"? Or like,
I have so many stories from that audition world that just have so informed exactly who I am. The worst one was I was auditioning for a TV show in New Zealand, and I got to like the final 2. And when I think back, I regret ever auditioning for that role, but it was like this young drug dealer, classic. But it was a main role, and I was like, fuck yeah, cool.
It's paying.
It was between you and Manu Bennett.
Exactly. That was my mentality back then. I was like, sweet, easy, let's just do this. And it got down to the 2 of them, me and the other person. And when you get to that point in an audition, because it takes months to get to that point, if you don't get it, you can ask for feedback from the network. And the network was TV3, I think. I didn't get it. I lost it, but I was able to get feedback. And she was like, "Oh, yeah, I got your feedback." And I was like, cool. What was it? And they were like, "Oh, they just thought you were great, but there was just too much wisdom in your eyes to be playing a drug dealer."
You need to dim the light.
Yeah, they just wanted more of a dumb islander to play this role.
love that.
Yeah, and that's probably the most pivotal. At that point, I was like, okay, this is fucked. How am I supposed to change this?
Close them?
I know.
Maybe have it half open.
Yeah, exactly. So did you want a blind one? Like, that was not a direction I was given.
You wanted Stevie Wonder to
play
this role.
No one asked me to play blind. Like, you know?
If you had told me.
What did your eyes look like?
I don't know. Like, I want the tapes. Yeah, just
Wow.
How do you play wisdom in your eyes? So it's just like, all
Would you like some drugs?
Yeah. But yeah, like that's one example of so many.
Crap.
Yeah, pretty shit, but good learning curves. But that's the sort of stuff like people don't know about. Pursuing this industry. And like power to the islanders who don't give a shit about it. But I think the wisdom in my eyes were too telling of that. I was just not supposed to be there.
How did you respond to that?
I think I messaged the agent, just said, well, it's fucked up. But then I went to the next audition.
You're like, okay, cool. So when's my next job?
Yeah. So
Because I
when's
need
my
to
next
pay
audition?
bills.
Because I need to I'm like struggling here. But you just get caught up in the glamour of trying to make it, I suppose.
Yeah.
So do you think it's harmful for characters to play into racial stereotypes? Like, for example, I was trying to look up the I remember reading through one of the interviews, and you said that you wanted our people to, you want different characters and for people to be able to see themselves and identify. And so, for example, like in TV and things, like we have Jonas, we have people who play security guards, we have people who play drug dealers. So is it a harmful thing where we do have people that are like that are security guards, that do work in factories?
I don't think it's harmful. Like this, stereotypes exist because they're part of our community. But if those are the only people from our community you're pushing, it's dangerous.
Yeah. How so?
Well, then, because people are sheep, they'll believe whatever they see. And this is why our visibility is really important. Because if in this country all they're really pushing up us being bouncers or working in factories or footy players, then you're only seeing
all you can achieve.
Yeah.
And then that's what young people are seeing in our community and going, well,
that's my life, that's my future.
yeah, if those are the stories that are worth telling from our community, then that must be it. Whereas when we're so much more than that,
You're the stage production factory, and I think that's a good balance of what you're trying to, based on what I'm understanding of what you're trying to achieve, where it's like, oh, here's somewhat of a stereotype, but there's subtlety to it.
Totally.
There's nuance to it. It's
Exactly.
not just, you're not a dumb drug dealer.
Exactly.
You're more than that.
Yeah, and
You're
they-
a wise drug dealer.
and you're a very smart one.
Your eyes. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I'm feeling it.
Clever.
You know,
You're a
I'm talking
clever
about
drug
drug
dealer.
dealer. It's like, oh,
Wow.
you know what? I'm
New
starting
bio
to
line.
see what
Yeah.
those auditions, what that casting agent.
Just what was that?
What drugs do you have?
This is the real reason I came. I just need you guys all. I worked in a factory.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no shame in that. But it's about the individual stories. Same with footy. And that's sort of what Parramatta is sort of covering, in that we see all these boys, our brown boys, we make up 47% of that NRL. But what are our actual stories that get us there? What are the stories of victory and loss amongst our boys that get us there? What are the stories of us, or what happens to our boys after they leave that world? On the most part, sometimes it's not a happy ending. How do we tell those narratives? There's so many layers to us. That's the sort of point. We have all come from different places that's brought us to this table today. And three of us are Samoan, but our stories won't be the same.
Yeah.
They'll be informed by our Samoanness, but they're never the same story.
Because I find it a struggle to really write down why I think some things are funny. But I know because I grew up in the culture. I know how it works. I understand that look that someone gives you, that subtle look is hilarious.
Yeah.
How do you translate that?
I think writing's hard. It's probably the hardest part of the process, I think, because nothing else gets made without someone writing it.
A good script.
I just try not to criticize the writing before, because I'm really bad. I'm one of those writers who won't write drafts before a final draft. I always just want to write the final draft.
Okay.
Oh, so you're constantly deleting.
I'm so bad at it. People are like, get over yourself. Write a first draft. I just want to write the perfect script all the time. But it's you just have to let go of judging the work before it gets to the point that it needs to. And also, it depends on who your audience is when you're writing. See, if when I used to write, and I always had white people as the sort of primary audience, I would critique my work a lot more. Because I'm like, Palangis wouldn't find that funny. Or Palangis wouldn't understand that. But writing's become easier because I don't care about that audience
It's
anymore.
like, do you think it's
Exactly.
funny?
But also, do my friends find it funny? And I like to base a lot of what I write around my mum. And I think more would my mum find this funny? And that's sort of my target audience is
awesome.
people like my mum. Because my mum's funny. She's so funny. Yeah. She should write, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's all about reframing your audience, I think, for me. It sounds really radical. People are like, oh, because I've been into rooms where I've had to pitch my show to panelists and people and finding bodies. And I remember when I pitched Parramatta originally, it was 4 Samoan boys, or 4 island boys, and the panelists, who were all white women, said to me, "Oh, no one would watch that."
Really?
Yeah, this was maybe like 3 years ago. And I was like, "Oh, why?" And they were like, "Because it's all islanders. Like, you have to diversify the cast." And I'm like, why would I diversify the cast?
Yeah.
Like, I'm an islander. I'm going to write islanders as the center of the stories that I create. And so for a period, I had the characters changed. I had a Samoan lead, a Lebanese boy, like an African boy, and then a white boy. And it just never sat right with me because I had changed the audience.
Yeah.
And it was unauthentic for me to write it that way. So then I ended up rewriting it back to what it was and centering 4 island boys. But the switch from learning that you can write stuff specifically for your community, and that's okay.
What is Parramatta? Give it a little spiel.
What we made was a pilot. So we shot it in 4 days. 15 to 20.
That is...
No, but it gets worse. We shot 2 pilots for 2 different shows in 4 days.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so one is called Parramatta, one's called Deity. Parramatta is, the gist of the show is 4 island boys pursuing the NRL. The NRL sort of serves as the backdrop, but the stories are really about these boys growing up in Western Sydney and just trying to grow the fuck up in this city, but also trying to make it. And then all the sort of the pressures and the highs and the lows of that world. Yeah. The lead character is called Atonio, which is based on my little brother, Atonio, who was sort of in that world for a long time. And I think... what we see as the public is the glory and all the beautiful parts. But I think, all of you would surely know someone in that world. Yeah. What they don't see are the sort of like the losses, the sadness around not making it or not making the cut. Like my little brother, like he's still very much in that world, and he having to watch him sort of navigate that as a young person is hard, especially when he's your younger brother. He took a year off, went to France and pursued it, came back. And so that's really what this story is about. It's about these boys just trying to grow up in this country. Deity is a complete flip. It's set in a fictional high school called Mount Druitt High. The lead is his name's Jacob. He has mild cerebral palsy, which is based on my nephew who has mild cerebral palsy, who's also called Jacob. And it was triggered by this moment. I went to this trampoline place with him and my nieces and nephews, and it was the first time I noticed that he was different. Yeah,
from the other kids.
Yeah, he should have just an attempt to jump on the trampoline because he kind of knew that something would happen. And so he just sat and watched the rest of his nieces and nephews. And for me, that was a really heartbreaking moment where I realized, man, we forget about, it's one thing to remember our kids, but remember, it's the discussion about intersectionality. Yeah. Who is telling the stories of our disabled community? No one. There's no one out there doing it. And so it was set in this high school about these kids. There's 4 of them who are the unlikeliest heroes amongst our youth. Anyway, someone goes missing in the school, another Samoan girl at formal. They're all year 12. And then these 4 particular kids wake up a week in the past. And they're the only ones who realize it. But they wake up with the powers of ancient Samoan gods. And they have to use those powers to then figure out what happened to this girl. Yeah. There's heaps of other layers. But it's about our young people. We've been taught so much to look outside for inspiration on how to pursue dreams or to overcome obstacles. And for me, what I've learned heaps as I grow up is actually we already have everything we need in our communities to empower us. And for me, the ultimate is connecting to culture and what represents culture more than our old belief system, because it informs everything of who we are today. Yeah, it's heaps of fun. I'm still thinking about post-production at the moment.
In the back of my mind.
So it's like Sailor Moon.
Honestly, it's like, so they're Sailor Scouts.
Yeah. And it's like someone said to me the other day, they were like, so it's like a superhero film. Yeah. And I was like, it is, but it's so much more. Because superhero films are based off fiction. Yeah. But these aren't. They're literally acquiring the powers of ancient gods. Yeah. They have existed for thousands and thousands of years. So this is better than a superhero fucking film.
I remember when we were talking about that Queensland club and how they wanted to base the club off Tane Mahuta, a Māori god. And for me, I was just like, use your own.
Who was that?
So this was, they shut it down because what I loved was that, a lot of Māori and Pasifika people jumped on and said they said this isn't right and whatnot. And so for me, I love that you're highlighting the stories that already exist within our culture and within our community.
Totally. Yeah. And do you know how amazing the ancient gods of Samoa are? They're amazing.
Like we still.
I didn't even know about them.
So before Christianity came, like even our story of creation, we have the underworld Pulotu as well.
Sabea, Nafanua.
Yeah, Nafanua.
She's the ultimate god.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful thing in that our god of war is a woman. It's like it's the god of fire. There's the god of rain and of agriculture. They're twins. They're brother and sister.
Yeah.
Like there's all these beautiful
symmetry.
Totally. Like we grow up having to learn about the ancient gods of Rome and Greece, and
Zeus,
I'm like, they ain't got shit.
Athena.
They have not got shit
Yeah.
on who our gods were.
Yeah. And like literally, I've noticed with a lot of our ancient gods, when it comes to like our indigenous beliefs, a lot of them did things to protect our people and to move them forward. Like it was never selfish. And so when I look at like a lot of not to put down the Greek culture.
No, of course not.
But looking at like Zeus and Athena and them, they're very selfish.
Yeah.
It's all very, like a lot of the chaos is created by self-centeredness.
Yeah.
When with us, it's always about community and about helping each other.
Totally. Yeah. So that's that on that.
Left that on there.
So in an Instagram post you wrote, if you can't already tell, Pacific women have always been the center of much of my work because most of the heroes in my life have been Pacific women. In another post you wrote, island women are the dominant center of my work. I know from the inside the links our women go. My mother, my sisters, my aunts and cousins, my friends. Island women have been the center of my world, embracing and whole. What do you mean by island women have been the center of your world, embracing and whole? And how have the women in your life inspired you?
Big one. That links back to my sexuality. Mm-hmm. I think the women in my family could see that before I could see it.
Yeah.
And so they did, you notice certain things that they did when you look back in hindsight, that they did to protect you because they knew eventually you would learn something about yourself that would be hard.
Yeah.
And so when I think back to all those moments, it was always had to do with my mother, who would nurture like these little things about me that she knew would eventuate into something the world would see as wrong. Mm-hmm. And for me, centering women is my way of saying thank you for preparing me for who I would become.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And I think because like a lot of the time when it does come to seeing Pacific women on screen, apart from Moana, I haven't seen as much.
Totally.
Especially being the center or main characters.
Yeah.
And so to read that, because I noticed on the IG post that a lot of comments were from women like me.
Yeah.
But because a lot of the time we don't get highlighted.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time when it does come to the type of women that are considered powerful and beautiful, you don't usually consider Pasefika women.
Yeah.
And so to see that was very empowering as well.
I think it's also like an anomaly to see a man speak to it.
Especially a Pacific Island man.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time it's not really.
Never.
Yeah.
And like you could see it sort of in the responses to cis. Mm-hmm. It was never men.
Yeah.
It was always women.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's another commentary on our men. Like, where are you?
Yeah.
When women are doing well, celebrate it.
Yeah.
Because the women are forever fucking celebrating men and their achievements. Men don't do the same. And so for me, centering women is just my way of playing my part and sort of raising and uplifting our women. Because they're always there. They're in the background and they don't ask for much.
Yeah.
But any opportunity you have with my male privilege to raise them up, I'll do it. But also I love my mother. Like I'm an absolute mother's boy. There's so much that my mother did that I just don't. And for me, she epitomizes the island woman because she did it without any need for acknowledgement. She just like really, we were fucking broke growing up. Like we never knew it until we really grew up. But I remember little things like my mom, we couldn't go anywhere or afford to go anywhere when in school holidays. But one holiday, she made us tie-dye the entire house as an activity. To keep us preoccupied. Yeah. And so we tie-dyed our home.
Yeah.
And that was, it was little beautiful things like that our mothers do that sort of go unannounced. I'm sure every Pacific person has those sort of stories about their mothers, But, males, they dominate even the storytelling space. Yeah. So I'm one voice trying to push the female voice. Mm-hmm. We need more. My shoulders are only so big. Yeah.
I was thinking when you were talking about your mom, because I told these guys like I will put on shows for my parents.
Yeah.
Did you ever like put on shows or perform to your parents or your mom?
And what was the reaction?
Oh, yeah. So this is the weird thing about growing up, right? So I was part of Old Local, so I was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
I am a Catholic. So I was part of a Samoan local group, and we did White Sunday and did all that stuff. It was really funny because growing up, the feminine part of me was always sort of like shoved aside and like, you don't be like that. But whenever it came to the need for a performance,
I will show up and show out.
oh, and it wasn't even that. The church, whether it be my father or the person would be like, Fia? And I'm like, do you want me? Like, what? Are you trying to like hide this part of me? Are you trying to like? It's very confusing.
I'm getting mixed messages right now.
Totally, and I was always getting mixed messages about what was appropriate and what wasn't. Because in the church context, it was like no, but it was like okay, we need a performance. Fia?
Any ideas?
Yeah, any ideas? Would you like to do a lip sync of some sort? And it was always me doing a lip sync to some like random fucking song.
What song?
Always. It was something different all the time. I think this is probably telling my age as well, but I think my go-to was he wasn't man enough for me.
Braxton.
Just
Wait, please tell me with the choreography, with the dance break.
I learned the whole dance, and I was always ready, but it was always just very confusing because I was like, I can't.
Do you want this or not?
Yeah. Like, do you want this performance?
No. And costume.
Yeah.
Do you want me in that dress?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, can I wear a wig in church? How does this work? But yeah, it was like that part of me was like only okay in this context. So yes, I grew up doing very random performances. But also my nan, like my mum's mum, whenever we all grew up at my nan's house, she made us do lip syncs in front of her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot of. Did your family see the same?
Yeah. They would like group us, and then we would have half an hour to come up with a performance.
Oh, the improv.
Totally.
The improv even.
Totally.
Like, we had prep.
Yeah, totally. And my nan would be the judge. She would just sit there and go, okay, yeah. And then decide who the winner was.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a very full-on like X Factor situation we had going up.
I love that. Like a Selai cowl.
Yeah. Totally.
Critiquing everyone.
Totally. Yeah, my nan was savage. Like, she was so savage. But actually, that is the beginning of my career. Was those lip syncs in front of my grandma.
Looking at your past work, so for example, we watched quite a few things. So how can someone be able to access or be able to look and support your past work as well as your future work? So like when it came to The Promise of Piha, I could not find it. 'Cause I was like, I would be willing to pay for it. But I couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah, it's film work's funny because it depends on so we don't actually own Piha anymore. It was bought by Rialto.
Okay.
So Rialto owns the film. So Rialto decides what they do with it. So distribution-wise, like I think our contract with them was for like 2 or 3 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. They screen it before they screen films in their cinemas. So until that sort of is done, then it can't be accessed online. Yeah, so it depends on kind of where the work ends up. Like Maria's online because...
it's on YouTube.
Yeah, because who owns it? PIC, Pacific Islanders Communication Hawaii. Bought it out, and so they own it now. So and they made it accessible. Mm-hmm. So yeah, film is weird in that way. Yeah,
the creator doesn't always own their creations.
In the past, like whenever I've gone to watch Pasefika films or whatever that I see online, there've only been a few instances where I've seen a lot of Pacific Islanders pack out a place. One of them was For My Father's Kingdom, and that's because a lot of people were able to see it online. Yeah. For example, when I went Pasefika Film Fest, not last year, the year before, hardly anyone. But when I talk to my friends or social circles, a lot of them say that they don't know what's there.
Pacifica Film Festival? Interesting, because I work for them.
With Carlo in there?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing is, how do we get the word out?
I think it's like any art form, really, like just sharing. And like, I think people underestimate the importance of a share and how simple that act is in helping to get people's work out. I made a really strong rule on social media for myself that I would never, and you'll probably pick it up now that I've said it, that anything I share has to be Pasefika. I don't share anything outside of that. Yeah. Because for me, the representation online is one thing on making films and whatever that center us, but actually your online platform is an opportunity for you to center Pacific people as well. We don't have the ability to do it on a bigger scale, but actually all our people are online. That's where our audience is. So a simple share, celebrating other people's work, whether it's like photographers or fashion designers or filmmakers or actors, just share everything. And you'll be surprised at how loyal Pacific audiences are.
Yeah.
They're very loyal. Share it even if you don't fucking like it. You know what I mean?
Wait. There's Pacific excellence, and then there's just Pacific.
Yeah.
Share both.
Totally.
Share both.
But
Share it all.
You have to, You know what? Like, we don't have the luxury to be selective at this point. You know? We don't. We have to share everyone's work, whether we fucking like it or not. And I will do it. Like, I will share everyone's stuff.
I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn.
Because we just have to be seen to be active.
Yeah.
And we have to be seen to be working. And that visibility alone is enough.
And so how can we be able to support Parramatta and Deity?
Share.
Share it.
Share it.
So
Oi.
everyone, because even talking in the past about other films that currently exist because they were made. Like, I remember when I watched Vi, I was sobbing.
Yeah.
But seeing that majority of the audience was white. And I was like, wow, like the people that look like this on the screen. And so I love that. So the whole thing of that's something that we can do within ourselves is share the things, whether it's good or not.
Totally. Share it. Share the work, because even if it's what we deem good or not, sometimes it's not, like, definitely not. But like, but you know what I mean? But you have to celebrate.
Why'd you look over here? Why did you gesture? Sometimes it's not.
But you have to celebrate it because the people made the effort to do it. You know? Yeah, like I said, we don't have the luxury to be selective. We just have to celebrate everyone doing something.
Oh, you love Beyonce?
Yes. Wait, I saw. So I saw.
I was like, wait,
that
hang
you
on.
said
You
that
love
you and
Beyonce.
Hanelle, I think you guys used to write to Beyonce or something.
Yeah, so I think we wrote PR to Beyonce.
Oh, and so that's the thing. Like, I noticed a lot of people of color, a lot of Pacific Islanders love Beyonce.
Totally.
And so, where did you get your love from Beyonce?
Why do I love her?
Why?
I don't know. I think she sort of epitomizes sort of, me using the people of color thing, but sort of brown or black excellence in a way that we haven't been afforded the opportunity to achieve in these countries. So, with the Black Lives Matter thing, because black people, African Americans, were like our only sort of visible access point on television for a long, long time. My love for Beyonce is sort of just a response to that.
I get that.
Because the Black Lives Matter thing brought up a lot for Pacific people in that we actually use African American culture a lot in a way that sometimes is questionable.
It's problematic.
Totally problematic. And so I'm trying really hard as a Pacific person now to find identity outside of that. And because we only really became involved in, African Americans really only entered our narratives in diaspora. And that was only 50, 60 years ago. So actually we had a formed identity
Before that.
for thousands of years. So what was that? What does that look like? And how do we integrate that now outside of the African American narrative that we've relied on for so long, and which I'm grateful for because they held us in visibility for so many years without realizing it. But now, how do we shift outside of that and create our own?
Yeah.
I don't know if we can because we've absorbed it so much.
So much.
Yeah.
Into music and into fashion, and there's nothing wrong with that. But how do we now find a balance? I suppose?
Yeah.
Without us feeling like we owe them so much, even though we do owe them so much. You know what I mean? Like we do. And like I say that so openly because we do owe the African American community so much.
The black community in America, they inspired the Polly Panther movement in New
Totally,
Zealand.
totally.
Like 1-4 I found in Sydney was iconic in the fact that they didn't have the American accent when they rapped. Which is very different in comparison to a lot of other Pacific Islander rappers that came out and straight away they're like,
American, totally.
with the American accent.
Go
And
do it.
No, I was going to try.
Yeah, I was excited.
Go.
I was excited. I was like,
So I think it's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so let's play a game.
What's the game?
So we're going to do improv.
improv
Improv
what?
in what way? Like singing?
Yes.
I can't
I will.
sing.
Yes, you can.
No, come
I've
on.
seen your work.
Let's sing, Adele.
Listen to my voice.
Let's sing. Get that husky
Yeah,
voice
Ray
out.
Charles.
Oh my
You got the
God.
Ray Charles rasp, okay?
You found my Achilles
And you're
heel.
blind, so
I can do many
Wise
things, I just
eyes.
can't sing.
So you can rap or sing. You will be given a word. You just have to come up with a few lines, few bars.
Few bars.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
If this ends up being crap, I'm cutting this.
Bro, this is
I'm cutting
this is
this.
gonna stay.
this is going to show my age so much.
Okay. And so I will give you each a word, and then you have a few seconds to come up with something, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Lamah, your word is aardvark.
Aardvark. Can
Wait,
I
not
get
yet. So you have-
definition?
Aardvark is an animal. It looks really weird.
This is
Peculiar.
aardvark.
Yes,
Yeah, he's an aardvark.
Yeah, he's an aardvark.
Hey, Arthur. He's an
Okay,
aardvark.
good.
So-
You have time to think. Sefa, your word is...
Phew, bro. Come on, man.
Your word is... amphibian.
Where are you reaching for these words?
No.
No, because it'll be... To hear you guys improv on these words would be hilarious.
Oh my God.
So think on that. Amphibian. Fear, your word is... No, I was gonna name a drug, but that's not good. We're playing into the
We're playing
drug.
into the stereotype.
mate.
But maybe if you give like
amphetamines?
lines of wisdom,
Yeah.
or
If you guys can see my eyes, there's a lot of wisdom.
Was it
out there, man.
aphrodisiac?
Aphrodisiac is the word for fear.
Aphrodisiac.
So you have a few seconds. When you're ready, you will go, and I will be like Fear's Gnan, and I will be the judge as to who is the best. Choreography is welcomed. If you want to add a beat with your hands or as a beatbox, that is welcomed as well. Extra points.
My voice is enough.
Woo!
Also,
And you can't use songs that already exist. Like, as in, if there's a song with amphibian, can't use that song.
I need to write this.
Okay, write it. Oh, okay. Jungle
I
Kitty.
need to write.
he's like, it's been years since I went to drama school.
It's been years since I rapped.
He's like going through my notes. What is
find all my
old
old
stuff?
let me go through my journal.
Yeah. my rap journal. Wait, give me time.
Journal.
What was my
By the way, this is Sefa and Lamah's audition for any of your future works.
I auditioned to be an aardvark.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Me.
Okay,
Oh,
go Lamah.
Damn it.
Lamah's word is aardvark.
Sometimes I feel like an aardvark. Sometimes I feel like I missed the mark. Yeah. I wanna be a shark. I wanna be Barack Obama. Yeah, I wanna be an aardvark. Yeah, like hey Arthur. I wanna be aardvark. Yeah, just missed the mark. I ain't missed the mark because I know who I are. That's how where I play my heart. Yeah, and that's the end of my story arc. Oh,
That was nice. Oh my god.
oh my god, that was so good. I was
That
like
was
singing,
amazing.
like
And rapping.
I want to say rapping. That was like,
It was a hybrid of everything. I think you
Yeah.
just created your own music genre.
But you really took us on the journey.
yeah.
Like
I
a
wanted
story
to be
arc.
like really humble beginnings.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I forgot to add a lib in the beginning.
Okay, go.
Oh, go on.
Yeah.
If I should have gone first.
Fuck, why did we... Why,
Hell.
how have I
One
not-
of us, Fia, should have gone first. Actually, no, I should have gone first. I can speak for myself.
Well, it's hard to follow that. But next is Sefa.
Man, stuff you.
Sefa's word is amphibian.
Woke up this morning feeling like a million. New day, new birth, just like an amphibian. Hold up, wait a minute, strong like an obsidian. Told your mum would make it. Ops are gone into oblivion.
Wow!
Pacifica excellence right
I
there.
know, right?
I'm inspired by Black as
And
King.
Shell.
Share that.
Also very amazing.
Oh, really? Black as King, guys.
But why
Inspired.
were you using expensive words?
I know, bro, that was really good.
That was really dynamic.
Yeah. Reminds me of Lin-Manuel.
Shut up.
And
But
Hamilton.
really? You reckon?
Oh. Audition.
I don't want to do mine.
And now last, we have Fia. His word is aphrodisiac.
Okay, so I'm about to embarrass my druid at this point. Which is like, I'm going to say the music Pasefika capital at the moment and where I'm from. But can I get a beat? No, wait. 5, 6, 7. Sitting on the table, ready for the attack, improving the provocation which I lack. I'm embarrassing myself and I'm going to sack. But my word for this game was aphrodisiac.
God. Yeah. Aphrodisiac.
Aphrodisiac.
Plenty attack. Shack. Like Barack Obama.
Thank you that the beat drummed that out.
That beat drum though. What beat was that? The drummer.
Yeah. Wow.
What's really sad is that my dad was a legit drummer.
He is a legit
He's
drummer.
a legit drummer, like island
Traditional
drums.
Tongan drummer.
Bro, did not pass on.
He didn't actually need to know that was you. But you've actually told him.
Dad, I hope you're proud. That's as close as I'm going to get.
So we'll edit that one out, yeah?
No,
Nah, it's in.
That was
It's
amazing.
in. I want to thank Fia for coming on the show. We really appreciate you taking out the time.
Where can people find your work?
Oh, it's all
What's
over.
your socials?
On my socials, at the Pelesasa Dream on Instagram, as well as at Pelesasa Pics on Instagram. And then there's other sort of links, but you'll find them on either of those pages. Sorry in advance for my long-ass novel captions.
So follow him on IG, support any of the work that's coming out in future. There should be web series.
Yeah.
And so
Coming
please
up
watch,
November.
share with your friends, share the words that the more views and more support we get, the more we can be able to see more of our people on screen. Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
That's another episode. I'm Sefa.
I'm Sila.
And I'm an odd fuck. Whoop, yeah.
It's the hand.
Ooh, yeah. Lamah. I'm Oma Rapeti.
Yeah.
It's
I know that song.
song.
Oma Rapeti, Oma Rapeti, Oma.
Yes.
I think it means run rabbit.
Yeah.
Is
Oma
that
Rapeti
run,
means
rabbit,
run.
run,
That
rabbit,
is the
run?
longest way to say run.
That's the song.
Yeah, it must be Run Rabbit. Because then they say like boom, something
Yeah,
hits
that's
the gun,
that's
goes
the
the
literal.
gun.
You know that famous song, that run, rabbit, run, rabbit.
Oh,
Run,
it's actually
Is that
based
right?
off an actual
Yeah.
song.
Oh, there's an English song.
Yeah.
No,
But
didn't
it's
you
Run,
know at the
Rabbit,
beginning
Run.
of Get Out?
Have you seen Get Out?
Yeah, I've seen
Have you seen
Get
Get Out?
Out.
When the boy's being chased. In
Run,
the first
rabbit,
that
run.
the song is playing, run, rabbit, run,
I
rabbit.
never knew it was
yeah,
based
I
off an
had no
actual
idea.
song.
And then it's Oma Rapeti. That's
Yeah.
Uma,
Okay.
Run, Rabbit.
Boy, that is a revelation.
You're like, this should be
Mind
recorded.
blown.
Yeah,
Mind blown.
my mind is actually blown.
Yeah, it's Run Rabbit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had no idea.
So you can hear it in the melody too.
That movie was scary.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Love it.
Yeah, totally. I'm still sitting here on the run rabbit thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look up the English version.
It's literally just one.
It's scary.
You know what's really fucked up though is we did this at uni. We had to do this when you welcome someone on.
The Porphyry?
Porphyry,
Yeah.
right? And
They asked
because
you.
me and Hanelle were the only two brown people in our uni, they were like, "Oh, you guys need to sing a song," but me and Hanelle were like so anti. Like we were like, "Fuck off, we're the only brown people. You do it."
Yeah.
Do you know what we sung?
Beyonce.
Oma Rapeti.
This is a sacred song.
Yeah. We were
To
like,
the
"Thank you
Tangata
so
Whenua
much."
of Aotearoa.
Yeah, and we were welcoming this Brazilian group to the school. And they were like, now the class will stand and sing a YSL for you. And we were like, Tori fuck. And me and Hanelle were just like, wow. We are the worst.
These Brazilians were probably crying like, oh,
They were like,
sounds
that was
so
the most
beautiful.
moving song I've ever... I felt the ancestors at this
People,
point.
The mana.
Yeah, it really is. We were talking about rabbits. Like, it was just...
I can just
Shocking.
imagine them like telling the kids of this generation, like, you know, when we went to New Zealand, they sang a song called Oma Rapeti.
That's
Similar
true.
to the haka.
Touch my heart.
really touched me at the
Touch
core
my soul. Touch
of
my
my
heart.
indigenous soul.
You know what we say? Oma Rapeti. He's like, damn, I just sang Run Rabbit. It's like all those years
Then we're
ago.
gonna shoot the rabbit. That's what we're singing.
Fuck, I wish.
Wait, are we the rabbits?
Yeah, what is the
It's a
context of
song.
that?
Oh my gosh, the colonizers
song?
used to sing the song when they used to get us to run.
Wow.
That's why they sing it in Get Out.
It is.
That
Because
makes
the
sense
song-
now.
the
But that's
song
that
is
was
about-
what Get Out was.
Yeah.
That's what Get Out.
That makes
was
absolute
about.
sense now.
So when they came up the birds, they were like, "Run, rabbit, run."
For real. And now that you think rabbit
Now
proof
we
fence,
teach that song to children everywhere in,
Rabbit-proof
in
fence?
Aotearoa.
Someone needs
Gracie?
to actually see what the history of that song is, because now
I know, I'm looking it up.
my
We're
mind
looking
is
it
it
up.
so
up.
blown.
Run, rabbit, run.
We'll send that to our team. Can you look at that?
Yeah.
Please? Give us an S.
Put it up in an email.
Jack,
Yeah,
do you
Jack.
mind running that, please?
Within the next 10 minutes.
I know. Can you bring up that video, please?